What if every human had a tail? Would it be useful, or would it just get in the way? It's hard to say for sure, but we can make some pretty good guesses based on what we know about tails in the animal kingdom. Hi, it's me, Nova, and today we visit another interesting what-if question. What if every human had a tail? First off, if all humans had tails, it would definitely throw off our sense of balance. Compared to most animals with tails, our center of mass is pretty high up, which is part of the reason that humans are such awkward apes. A tail could help with this, bringing our center of mass lower and closer to the ground. Although it might not do much for us until we learned how to use it. Tails also come in handy for a lot of other things, like keeping cool, attracting mates, and communicating with other members of your species. Take a lizard, for example. They have a prehensile tail that helps them grip branches while they're climbing. And when they're hanging out on the ground, their tail helps them keep their balance so they don't get rolled over. Some lizards can even flick their tails really fast to startle predators or shake them off, while they're trying to grab onto the lizard. That said, a little shake and bake like that would probably require some serious tail strength. And speaking of strength, if humans had tails, we wouldn't necessarily need to hold our babies with our hands all the time. We could just use our tails to wrap around them like a monkey. But then again, our tail hands would probably get in the way of things like making and eating food, playing musical instruments, or using a computer. Depending on where the tail would attach to our body, it could cause all sorts of problems, like if it grew from our rear ends. It might get in the way when we're walking through crowds or trying to squeeze into a small space like an elevator. But maybe, just maybe, a tail wouldn't be all bad. In fact, having a tail might actually help prevent some medical conditions. Scoliosis, for example, is a condition that causes the spine to curve uncomfortably to one side. If everyone had a tail, maybe it would help prevent this condition, because it would put pressure on the spine in a way that promotes a straighter posture. And there's some evidence to suggest that babies born with a condition called hip dysplasia, which causes the hip joint to be less stable than it should be, may benefit from having an extra appendage to waddle around on. We don't have tails though. So instead of helping us walk, our appendix does the opposite. Our appendix gets in the way, which is part of the reason why it's often the source of painful infections. But if we did have tails, maybe they'd help prevent these kinds of problems. Or maybe not. After all, if we evolved from a primate with a tail, we probably wouldn't still have that tail today, unless it was very, very useful for our survival. The fact that we don't have tails suggests that losing them didn't hurt our chances of survival and reproduction, but it didn't help us out either. They were basically neutral in terms of evolution. So the answer to the question of whether a tail would be more useful or more harmful isn't clear-cut. It would depend on the individual and their environment. But one thing's for sure, if everyone had a tail, we'd have to update our definition of useful. Thanks for watching Parallelish. I'm Nova, your guide through the unknown. Want to explore more timelines? Tap the playlist above and keep diving into the what-ifs. Until next time, stay curious.